what evidence is there to say that the Earth is in fact an old Earth instead of a very young Earth?
Yeah, so far what I've given the geologists who rely on sedimentations, the three-ring or ice core measurement a few 100,000 years from Antarctica, they are what you call relative dating. But I think scientists today rely more on something that is what you call gives more or less absolute dating based on radioactive decay of certain elements. That is to say they use radioactive dating, radiometric dating. For example, everybody knows about carbon-14, decays in the carbon-12. The carbon, we always use the phrase radiocarbon-14 dating. And we are happy when carbon-14 dating is used to date the disease growth, and we have no question about that. How does this happen? We know that certain isotopes are certain elements that have extra neutrons. They are not so stable, so they decay and give radioactivity. But they decay at a certain constant rate. And so a simple calculation of based on what they call half-life. Half-life is what is the time taken for this element to have half of it decay. So half-life decay, and then quite simple mathematics. You can actually measure the mother element and the daughter element as a result of the radioactive decay, the ratio of which will give you a means to date what is the age of the sample. So this is called radiometric dating decay. There are 40 over such instruments actually available, more than just radiocarbon.
And you mentioned these are objective way to measure.
Yeah, it's not because we scientists personally like it. You must remember when it comes to all this radioactive dating, it's not just Christians involved, Muslim scientists involved, Mormons, atheist scientists involved, Buddhist scientists involved, natural, unbelieving scientists. They all seem to agree. They have no question about radiometric dating, whether it be carbon-14, whether it be uranium to lead, or thorium dating, or zircon dating. So all these consensus.
Yeah. So this is a valid way to measure the age of the Earth.
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, and interestingly, when all these scientists from all belief background work together, the dating of the Earth is about 4.2 billion years. So, and they seem to also have, you can use different uranium to lead dating or thorium to lead dating, different elements, different processes. They seem to correlate with one another.
4.2 billion.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, in fact, there are certain other datings like the thermoluminescence of pottery, another, not just radiometric dating, other ancient dating method, amino acid racemization, measuring some optically active components of the materials involved, and through some calculations, you can also deduce the age of the element. They do minimally all agree that the Earth is a very ancient Earth. Not 6,000 years, not 600,000 years, not 6 million years, 4.2 billion years or thereabout. So I think it makes it very, you have to be very, very close-minded to ignore what seems to be non-controversial issue about the thousands and thousands of scientists of all races and religion. So I think we cannot just ignore it. So if that's the case, then we have to say that maybe God was in no hurry when created the earth. He took his time.
But then how do you reconcile this with what the Bible says? Is there a proper way to interpret Genesis such that there's no contradiction here?
Yeah, the perceived contradiction is if you read the Bible at face value, 7 times 24 hours a day. And that, so the Hebrew word for that is Yom, Y-O-M, Y-O-M. Does Yom indicate just 24 hours, Now in Genesis 1:5, God called the light day and the darkness night. How long is the day? 12 hours. Night 12 hours. Day 12 hours. See, got a slight difference already. So it's not just 24 hours. Then Genesis 1:5 says there was day 1, evening and morning. So now day is called evening, morning, 24 hours. So the Bible is not working with us, the kind of modern bee clock people. Then, interestingly, you have the 6 days of creation, then the 7th day, the Sabbath day. And you read Hebrews 4. The Sabbath day is still ongoing. The Sabbath day started from the end of the 6th day, ongoing, and we shall, if we have faith, enter the Sabbath rest of God. And sometimes, in Genesis 2:4, the day is used in an undefined length, It said, in the day the Lord made the heaven and the earth. I would tell my children, in those days we have floppy disks. In those days we have those tape recorders. It's to point the significance not so much as the hours and minutes, but there's certain specific character of that day. So now all this should alert us to be sensitive to how the meaning of the word must also be contextually defined, So 6 days you shall labor, 7th day you shall rest. Okay, sure. And then he said, in 6 days, the Lord makes the heaven and the earth, and he rested in heaven. Now, that one is, I think should give us a sec. It's a creation day. I can go into that later. The point here is you should not restrict it to 24 hours. After Psalm 90 just says that a day in the Lord is 1,000 years. So Genesis 11 verses 10 to 11 says, in that day the Lord will do this. Same thing, yo. So the word bazaar, flesh, in Hebrew, they have 8-9 meanings there, no, depending on what's the context used. I think we should be a bit more sensitive. In fact, somebody said, the sun appeared on the 4th day. Was there 24 times? Was there 3 times 24 hours day before the sun appeared? So all I'm calling for is we should, I think, recognize that to stick to such a rigid 24/7 hours can be done only by ignoring the flexibility that the Bible does apply when we use the word yom or day. And secondly, to insist on that lead us down to the tunnel where in the end we are totally at odds with what the scientific evidence seems to give to us.
So if you abandon this 24 hours, 7 days reading of Genesis, then there's no contradiction at all.
There's no contradiction, then you have to ask what does it mean. So there are 2 or 3 ways in which other Christian scientists who don't believe in the young earth creation suggest could be how we understand the creation. One is called the intermittent overlapping day age, meaning day age. Now, day age also has its different variations, but it was certainly not necessarily only because evolution came along that we try to adjust for the long length of times. Augustine, 1,500 years ago, already suggested that this day could be a day age. But it's called overlapping day age. If I give an example, you look at the chart. In day 1, the formation of the planet Earth, the body. Day 2, the atmosphere and the ocean. Day 3, dry land vegetation. Day 4, clearing atmosphere. Day 5 is air and sea animals. Then the land animals, day 6. And then day 5, then if this is what they call concordist creationism. Intermittent God intervened to create new species or new elements. If you ask me what did I do last week, I just thought last week. Last Monday I went to the cinema. Tuesday I went to the gym. Wednesday I took a rest long middle week. Thursday I went to CG meeting. So you mean to say Monday I did nothing else Monday. When I say Monday, what did I do? I went to the cinema. I am highlighting what is the defining characteristic of the period. So in that sense, the various days described in the Bible show during this period of time, not necessarily restricted to 24 hours, God initiated a new creation process. Having initiated, it still carries on. Now the formation of the atmosphere and the ocean and the geologic processes still continues from the time. So God has this intermittent initiative, process, which mean that when we look at the Bible, we see how God actively intervenes, and secondly, He continues to act, and thirdly, we are not locked into that position where we just have to ignore whatever science says. This is called the intermittent overlapping age.
And the second one?
The second one is called Analogical Day Interpretation. Analogy meaning, when we read the text, you will say that, well, God was setting up a model that the day 1 is to describe his characteristic activity of the day. It was just describing different. The day here described different portions of time where he initiated some activity. So in a sense, it wasn't telling us in earthly clocks. It was how God has there's a sequential set of events that God initiated. Day 1 he did this, they do this, but this should not be reduced to human 24-hour day. On the contrary, in a sense, rather than God's model, analogical day, we model after our 24/7 days. Our 24/7 days, our 7 days is actually modeled on God's sequence of events. God has apportioned creation in 7 days, days in that sequential period of time, and so we, analogically speaking, at the human level, follow it so that God can set up a pattern that we follow in terms of keeping the Sabbath. So I think so basically, again, the point is you must recognize that the perspective of the Bible in how it creates in describing the creation was merely describing what God was doing.
So
in God's terms.
I read a commentary by T.D. Alexander, if I'm correct. He is saying that the day of the Lord, that is the day according to God's perspective, whereas our day is actually 24 hours, so it doesn't mean it's a 24 hours day.
That's right.
It can be very long period. So that is your second view. That's the second view,
I would say. Now, I would say, to summarize this, at one level, which is easier to understand, at the very simple level, give credit. It seems easier to understand the Bible by just taking it 24 times 7, 12 out times 7. It allows that. If it's restrict only to Genesis, and but I have a reason, even within the Genesis account, the word day has different variations.
Okay.
But to some people, it's easier to understand this if you follow the young earth creationists. But you can understand what is happening in science. But if you follow the old earth creationists, you are able to understand science. Not that you necessarily have to accept everything science says, but a large portion of it seems to be a growing body of reliable knowledge and data.
So there's consistency there.
So that's why I said, even though there's moot point, I think I would say that we must recognize the strengths and weaknesses, and why some people still refuse to compromise in their words this 24-hour times 1 day because they think this is a straightforward reading But so I would say, well, maybe I will ask my brothers to how should I call it, open a bit more. Let me just summarize it nicely. I think if I may say interim then we can end on this So, whether you're young earth or old earth creation, we all agree the universe has a beginning and a creator. And not only that, Genesis, we all agree, refers to actual historical account. There are some people who say the Bible is mean, but let's thank God, young earth, old earth are both insistent that the Bible describes historical event. Then secondly, I think I've already emphasized again that biblical text in Genesis 1 and 2, taken by itself, allows for both interpretation. So let's recognize that it can be 24 hours or longer indeterminate period. Finally, since we are all having debates about how to understand the Bible, I think there will be lack of consensus probably on this for a long time. Although I have one caution, homeschoolers who are taught that all these scientists are teaching wrong things, behind it is a kind of what you call conspiracy against the faith. And then you go to the college and study and they say, well, the lab work is not so bad, The scientists are not so evil as we thought, Although now I'm not sure about the University and the Humanities part, that one all gone crazy, So then they will lose their faith.
So so you mean some homeschooling, the type of education has prepared our children wrongly?
Prepare our children not so that when they prepare wrongly, so when they go to the university, they got a shock. They say now they have to choose between what seems to be really enlightened science.
That's why there seem to be some inconsistency between the Bible and science.
And then they will abandon Christianity. Well, no, I think that's bad. But finally, I'll just say, let us agree that the Bible is inerrant. Regardless of our disagreement, the Bible is still the final authority. All truth is God's truth. What we disagree is not the Bible, but our interpretation of the Bible. I think you would say. So, but let's try to continue to harmonize with integrity, respecting both science and scripture, and let us be tentative about science especially. After all, I say Newtonian science gave way to Einsteinian science, Newtonian mechanics gave way to quantum mechanics, and even right now, there are questions about quantum mechanics. They got more than a dozen interpretations. Einstein's general theory of relativity also is known to be incomplete, or is the word, So, they're all subject to revision. So, having this in mind, I ask, okay, we have disagreement, shall we fight? I think we should, because you must take seriously your faith. That ends up in a serious debate. Fight but don't fight to death Your fellow Christian in Christ Okay, that's how we begin our view on science and scripture.